Hello and welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm your host, Doug Hepburn of Hepburn Financial Advisors, a boutique wealth management firm located in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, providing trusted advice to successful individuals, families, and businesses for over 20 years. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Fred Lahm, branch manager of Princeton Mortgage. Hi, Fred. Tell us something good in your world today.
Hey, Doug. Well, as you know, Princeton Mortgage, I'm in the mortgage business, and, the future looks green. I think the shock of higher interest rates might be, falling off people's shoulders here. And without that shock, rates maybe stay steady or lower down closer to in the 6 range. I think it might open up the doors for some people. So, folks not wanting to move the last couple of years, now without that sticker shock of maybe just eased into it is what it is. And I think it's a bright future for 2024. And probably a great time to do some investment home purchasing. I mean, in your world, financial world, what are you seeing questions come through for people looking to buy investment properties or commercial investment properties? What are you seeing?
That's a great question. We always have clients, particularly in the high net worth realm, that are looking at real estate as an alternative asset class.
Okay.
But obviously, with the increase in interest rates, that's sort of tempered the appetite for either buying commercial properties or residential properties, especially. So we're not seeing a whole lot of questions in that realm right now. One of the things that we're seeing, and we kind of covered this in a previous show, was the fact that from a big picture perspective, it appears as though due to the pandemic, a lot of companies are reducing their footprint.
Mm-hmm.
That's putting pressure on commercial office lessors who are not getting the lease renewal rates that they thought. So we have leases that are coming up, 5-year leases from 2019 to 20 that are coming up for renewal, and there are concerns that people aren't going to renew. There's also that debt overhang where people, commercial office building owners have financed their properties, and that debt is going to be coming due at a much higher interest rate. So now they're getting squeezed at both ends. Their revenue's gone down and their costs are going up. And the question is, where do they go in order to keep their balance sheet from going upside down? But 2, where's the opportunity? Because, like that Chinese symbol for crisis, it also means opportunity. And in that, we're seeing a lot of promoters of secured floating rate debt that's secured by real estate. And I think a lot of people would tell you, it's backed by real estate, you don't have to worry about it. That doesn't have risk.
Yeah.
That's not true. Everything has risk.
Everything.
And if it didn't have risk, it wouldn't be paying some of the insane rates that some of these products are paying. So my only recommendation to viewers out there is talk to your financial advisor, read the prospectus, because a lot of these things are sold by prospectus, and that's usually a huge disclosure as to what risks are associated with those products.
Well, I appreciate that response. I mean, you're right about the risk. I mean, my outlook is positive 2024, as we're starting to see, obviously the government, Fed come out and they're going to ease off rates here. But, not every rate is the same. They changed up some of these loan level price adjustments, which means that if you are a quote unquote risky buyer, your rate is not going to be just like that one of a higher FICO score, low risk in residential box. So, we are. I see the green. I see a lot of opportunity, and I see the future. At least in residential real estate, a lot of people are going to have to be creative as far as their personal family lives, and if they're going to take this as an investment route. But there's definitely going to be opportunity out there.
I'm glad you said that, because recently I read a headline that indicated that the number of transactions actually dropped towards the end of the fourth quarter.
Big
And
time.
I'm not sure whether that's indicative of where things are going or whether people are just taking a pause because they're anticipating a drop in Fed rates. I know the Fed has signaled that they expect rates to come down, to be able to cut rates in the future.
Mhm.
How near that is, I don't know. Already we're seeing because we are in an election year.
Yeah.
So the candidates are concerned that the Fed may try and put their thumb on the scale by changing interest rates. Obviously, the Fed wants to try and remain neutral and not appear to bias one candidate or another.
Mhm.
So I think, in my personal opinion, the Fed is probably going to keep things where they are, just because they don't want to lose the perception of objectivity with the public.
I don't mind that.
Yeah, and so I mean, do you foresee the Fed cutting rates this year, at least before the election?
See, I don't like that. I mean, I think they're going to. I mean, they said it. Powell said it,
Right,
potentially. But I don't like the big change. Big
right,
change shows, like just different versions of different graphs and people having their opinion, which then sways people to do A, B, or C. And for me, if we stayed things the way they are, maybe a little bit more drop, maybe get out of the 7 in front of that interest rate and somewhere in the 6s might benefit. But I think the quarter four, to back to what your statement as a quarter four drop off, I think in for the first time in 3 years, potentially 4, we had a true slowest part of the year. COVID was
right.
blasting homes out. Then a year, 2021, same thing. And 22 was, and so, I mean, people were waiving everything to getting to a home and paying 30%, 20% over what the house was potentially worth. So this is that mix, people waiting for the new year, people getting sick of just looking for homes, and actually a true normal fourth quarter in residential real estate. I think that's just where we're at. And I think it's good for a reboot, reset.
It's funny you use that word normal. I remember after the financial crisis of 2008, we had some major managers, investment managers, talking about the new normal. And I think the reality is, anytime there's dramatic change, it's very unsettling. It creates chaos, and because people aren't used to it, they don't know what to expect. And if they do know what to expect or trying to anticipate change, the
Mhm.
risk of being wrong is heightened. And so the the fact that the Fed has raised rates as dramatically as they have, I know
Quickly.
was unsettling for very quickly and very steeply in a short period of time. But I think that was unsettling for a lot of people, certainly unsettling for the bond market,
Yeah.
but probably it was probably, I don't want to say the best thing that could have happened, but it was about time because
Not for some people.
the Fed had its boot on the neck of the interest rates for such a long time that it was really distorting the fixed income
Yeah.
markets. And now we're coming back to some kind of normalcy.
So Doug, we actually have a viewer question from Louis Frank in Philadelphia, who asks, quote, high net worth individuals are moving to low income tax states to save on taxes. Do you think is this a good long-term plan?
You know, that's a great question. And we saw a lot of that happen. There were a couple of things that drove that. First was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 2017, which limited the deduction for state and local taxes to $10,000 a year
Mhm.
on for individuals on your itemized deductions on your personal tax return, your 1040. And the reason why the feds decided to do that was, if they allow unlimited state and local tax deductions, then the federal government's really subsidizing your state or locality through giving you a tax benefit. So they decided to cap that. Plus, it also raises revenue.
Hmm.
Um, that forced a lot of people from high tax states like New York, like New Jersey, down to Florida, like California, to Texas, Colorado. So a lot of lower tax states are seeing an influx in population. The real question is this good? Well, it depends. And I think it's really a personal thing. From a long-term perspective, taxes are probably one of the biggest expenses that people incur over their lifetime, aside from housing and food.
Hmm.
And so to minimize taxes, state and local taxes in particular, I think is a good thing. The question is, there is it good to do just for the tax benefits? Now, if you're moving from a high tax state to a low tax state where you have no friends, there's nothing to do, you're unhappy,
I was
chances
thinking the same
are,
thing.
and I would lay money that you're probably going to be increasing your mortality
Yeah,
by moving to a place where you're not going to be happy.
especially if you're
So,
married
yeah.
and it doesn't
So,
go.
yeah, especially if you're married and your spouse doesn't want to go. But the reality is, you know, making smart tax moves is important and should be considered when making any decisions. But you shouldn't let the tax tail drive the investment dog or the housing dog or where you live
Mhm.
um, completely. Now, if you do choose to move to another tax state, a lower tax state, there are a couple of caveats. First off, you you oftentimes have to renounce your residency in the state in which you're leaving because a lot of the high tax states are going after people who've moved out. They want their revenue back.
New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
got to prove that you actually moved. That
Yeah.
means changing your driver's license, owning property, registering to vote, and living there for greater than 181 days in a year.
Mhm.
So, uh, so that's important. Now, if you still own real estate in your prior state, your high tax state, that could be an issue. So, the important thing to do is talk to your financial advisor, talk to your tax professional, make sure that you've got your ducks lined up to
Mhm.
prove that you actually did move, that it wasn't just a tax dodge. Because, New York, New Jersey, California, they're all trying to come up with ways to get that revenue back because the number of people who've been migrating for tax reasons has been huge, and it's had a big impact on the budgets of those states. And they can't run a deficit.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to, like the federal government. So
That's a
just
great
be
answer, Doug.
forewarned.
Yeah, piggyback on that, like I'm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and some people coming down from New York for that reason, they need to find out also your income tax too. So make sure you talk to, I would imagine that you would advise them to talk to whomever their CPA about what that income tax rate is wherever they're moving to, because it might be a wash, it might not be, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's very important. Look before you leap and make sure you know what you need to do before you set those wheels in motion. Because,
yeah,
if you try and do that and find out that, it's a bridge too far, now you got to go back. Now you got to undo everything you did. So
cool. Well, thanks, Frank, for sending that in. If you're listening, that's great. If there is something you'd like to ask, here's how to send your questions to Money Matters.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Well, as we all know, tax laws are constantly changing, as are the interpretations of those laws on the part of the IRS. We love the IRS. The last month was no different, and the IRS gave us a few gifts, or more appropriately, stocking stuffers. To finish out the year by clarifying some of the detail in the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act of 2022, also known as the Secure Act 2.0, which was passed in the final hours of 2022 conveniently. Since you're the tax expert, I'd like to ask you what those changes are and how they might impact our viewers, myself, or anybody listening.
That's right, Fred. The IRS released Notice 2024-02, like right at the end of 2023, which clarifies a number of provisions in the Secure Act. And that the original Secure Act was passed in 2019. The one at the end of 2022, the Secure Act 2.0, was really just an improvement on a lot of things in 2019 and in addition. But before we get started, I just want to remind our viewers that this information is not intended to be tax advice. We strongly encourage you to speak to your tax advisor, attorney, or CPA or enrolled agent to address these for your particular situation, because everybody's situation is different.
Okay. Well, by the name of the act, it sounds like Congress wanted to make it easier for people to save for retirement. So I saw that the notice changes the available credit for employers with new retirement plan. We all probably have a retirement plan or should. So how does that work?
That's a great question. So, for years, Congress is, look, let's face it, Congress is always trying to get people to save for retirement, because in the United States, we have one of the lowest savings rates in the world. And it's been a concern. And so one of the things many years ago that they did was establish a credit for expenses incurred by small employers to set up a plan. So, if you talk to a TPA or an attorney and get your documents drafted to have a 401k plan, and you incur those expenses, you can deduct them. But if you get the tax credit, that may be more beneficial to you. So what that's been around for a little bit. What they did was they expanded it. It used to be 50% of the plan administration costs for new plans over the first 3 years. Now they've increased that to 100%, up to $5,000. Now the 100% only is available for companies with 50 employees or less. If you got 51 to 100 employees, then you're still limited to 50%. But hey, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. And if that's removing one more barrier to employers setting up a retirement plan, that's a great idea. There's an annual limit of $500, or if greater, $250 multiplied by the number of non-highly compensated employees, up to $5,000.
Gotcha.
So pretty good deal.
So, I think you answered another question I had within that as far as the credit, but what makes the credit more valuable than a deduction? Any advice on that?
That's a great question, and it really depends on the taxpayer situation. So, for example, if you are in a low tax bracket, a deduction may be more valuable than a tax credit. The higher your tax bracket, the more valuable a credit is. So, for example, let's say you are in the 10% bracket. A deduction of 10% is probably could potentially be more valuable than a credit for 10%.
Gotcha.
Whereas, if you're in the 40% tax bracket, a credit could be a lot more valuable. So it really depends on the taxpayer situation. Now, back to this notice that came out, it was really, the IRS's way of telling practitioners some of the different things that their interpretation of the law and how it's going to be implemented. So, for example, one of the things that was added in Secure Act 2.0 was the fact that you can get a credit for making employer contributions to a retirement plan. And to the best of my knowledge, this has never been done previously in U.S. tax history.
Nothing I know.
Obviously, if you got a retirement plan and you're making contributions on behalf of your employees, that's deductible as a business expense.
Yeah.
But to be able to make that contribution and get a tax credit for it just leverages up the value of making that contribution. So again,
Gotcha.
Congress is trying to sweeten the pot for employers to put money into plans for their participants. So just some details on this credit. It applies to small employers with under 100 employees, and there's a bias towards employers with under 50 employees. As you can see, there's a theme here. They really want to encourage the smaller companies to do more with their retirement plans. You can get up to $1,000 per year per employee. Now, that's for employees whose wages are between $5,000 and $100,000. So what they're saying is they'll give you a tax credit for the money you put into a plan, depending on how many employees you have that earn between 5,000 and 100,000. We're not going to give you the credit for high earners, people over 100,000. We're not going to give you the credit for somebody who's part-time, who's only coming in a couple of hours a week and making under $5,000.
Yeah, they want to motivate those people.
Exactly. It's trying to motivate the business owners to be able to say, hey, look, I want to encourage you to participate. So, and these contributions apply to not only matching dollars in a 401k, but also non-elective contributions, meaning where the company just puts the money in, and you don't have to put money in yourself as a participant. The employer can still get a credit for it. So that's a good thing. What they did though was they again, like the credit for plan expenses.
Yeah.
They limited that to 3 years. This one they limited to 5 years, and they tapered it down 100% in years 1 and 2, 75% in year 3, 50% in year 4, and 25% in year 5. And that's all for employers under 50 employees. If you're over 50 employees, then there's adjustments to that to make it less sweet, because again, they're trying to bias this for smaller companies so that they get more onto the 401k train.
Okay, a lot of loopholes there,
Yeah, but and that's why you got to talk to your tax advisor or your plan administrator or your financial advisor, because depending on the size of your company, the makeup of your workforce, whether or not they participate, whether are they white collar, are they blue collar, is it manufacturing, is it a service industry, all those are going to play into how you design your retirement plan, because the idea is to provide a benefit to people so that they plan for retirement, they save for retirement. And not only that, how it helps the employer is it helps them retain people, because now, a lot more companies are offering benefits to keep people on board instead of raising pay.
Yeah,
and
that is paying.
Yeah, it's a form of compensation. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah. I know we're getting towards the end here, and I have a couple more here for you, Doug. Is it okay for you have enough time for a couple more?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. One of the things is the differences between the IRAs and 401. So can you explain what a simple IRA is and a simple 401k? What the difference is between a simple IRA and a simple 401k, and were there any changes recently that affect these plans?
That's a great question. And simple IRAs and simple 401ks have been around for years. With my clients, I haven't really done a whole lot of work with them. We traditionally go directly to 401k plans, because the simple IRAs were sort of in this middle space between, offering allowing people to contribute to a regular IRA, and the company offering a SEP, or a simplified employee pension. So with the simple IRA and simple 401k, here are the big differences. With a simple IRA, there's for the employer, there's no requirement to file a Form 5500. That makes life easy.
Mhm.
It's lower cost. There's no annual testing, but there's a requirement that they either put 2% in non-elective, regardless of whether you participate, or a 3% match, meaning if the participant puts money in, the employer matches dollar for dollar up to 3%. And that's true for both the simple IRA and the 401k. Simple 401k, that is.
Okay.
The simple 401k is sponsored by the company, but they have to file a 5500 every year. The other benefit to a simple 401k is it allows you to have loans.
Yeah.
Now, what I am seeing here is that, and another difference is, people are familiar with regular 401ks, traditional 401ks. The simple plans have a lower maximum contribution rate. So, for example, in 2024, if you're under age 50, you can put 23,000 into your 401k plan. For a simple plan, you can only put 16 grand.
Wow.
And if you're over age 50, in a traditional 401k, you could do a $7,500 catch-up contribution, whereas in your simple IRA or 401k, you only do 3,500.
Yeah.
So, if you got people who want to sock away money, traditional is more valuable in that respect. But one of the key things that came out of this notice was that with the simple plans, you had a difficult time switching from a simple plan to a traditional 401k because you had these limitations on 2 years where you couldn't have another plan. Now they've changed that and they've made it easier to be able to do a mid-year change. So there's a lot of good stuff that just kind of got clarified by the IRS. Roth contributions in 401ks and employer Roth contributions, I think, are a huge one. And what you're probably going to see soon is, if you're a sole proprietor or a smaller company, is Roth contributions to your simple or simple 401k or your SEP or simplified employee
Mhm.
pension. So a lot of good stuff coming down the pike. We're going to see a lot of changes to company plan documents.
I appreciate the answers, Doug. I think we're kind of we're out of time here. I could go on with 15, 16, 17 more questions if you want, but I appreciate your answers. Be sure to tune into our next show with Trey Lamborn, president of Egress Solutions LLC.
And thanks, Fred, for co-hosting today. And thanks to our director, producer, and all the staff and efforts that go into making this such a great program. Most importantly, we want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in to Money Matters TV, because your money matters.